Hey dude, this is another tVz and it's got the same general theme and problem as the first one. Let's look at benchmarks first, 6 minutes. We've got 22 workers, so we're short 2 just like last time. And 8 minutes we're looking for 30 and we've got 28, so we're short 2. And at 10 we're looking for 44 and we've got 42, so we're short 2. And at 12 we're looking for 54 and we're short... Oh, we're caught up. So that's cool. That's good times. Alright, and so 12 minutes is when you want to go from 3 racks production into... Looks like you've secured all your gas and you've got a reasonable income. You've got 2 mules down. It's funny because with 54 workers you should... Yeah, that's the problem. Alright. See how there's only 16 workers down here and then there's way too many up here. There's 24 up here. Yeah, that's why you don't have a $2,000 income right now. You should. And imagine if you had 2,464, you'd be almost 30%, 40% ahead of the Zerg on income. Pretty crazy. So right now, when your cap saturation on 2 base and your is when you want to throw down your 3rd command center and throw down 4 more racks. So let's see if that's what happens. Do 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 do. And you notice that at this point you made turrets because you knew mutas were coming. You have tons of marines, like 43 marines. And your income is greater than his, and he has no saturation at all in his 3rd. So the goal of Uber Ups is to be ahead at this point, and you are ahead at this point. And then it's to take no damage from muta harass and build up to a ginormous army while this 2-2 is finishing. So your turrets were way out of position. You're going to take some damage from mutas. And now, after losing 14 workers, you remember how our goal is to have 2,000 income and 464 income, so that we're ahead of the Zerg at this point? Now you're not ahead of the Zerg at this point. So the whole build kind of revolves around being ahead of the Zerg from 12 minutes to 15 while you build up your big army. And you're not. You've got actually half the income that you should have at this point. And it's kind of hard. You basically lost the game already, you know, like I know that you had questions about the rest of the game, but this game is now over. You can only win from behind in tVz if you have big counter units like Thors against mutas and Blue Flame Hellions against Lings and Banshees against Infestors and Siege Tanks against Roaches. Like, but this style, the Mass Marine Medevac, you can't really win from behind, especially not pushing across the middle. Like if you get a really lucky drop, or 2 drops at the same time while you push across the middle, you'll lose your whole army in the middle. You'll lose this drop, you'll lose that drop. He'll clean up everything you have, and then he'll have a teeny tiny income and he'll try to counterattack. And if you survive that counterattack and then push out again, you can win the game from there. So it's like, it's not impossible to lose from way behind, but it's really hard, and it requires a lot of luck and it requires a lot of drops and a lot of catching him off guard. But you're not playing the drop style, you're playing the push across the middle and hope you have a bigger, stronger army than him, and that requires you to have a bigger, stronger econ than him. And his econ is so weak that you should be able to have a stronger econ than him. Like, he still doesn't have 2,400, and that's what you should be on and should have been on for the last 3 minutes. So over that 3 minutes, you're supposed to go from, you know, a teeny tiny army to right at 15 minutes you want to have about a $9,000 or $10,000 army, and you should be at 200 unit space and with 2-2. So you're only at 130 unit space. You've taken some damage, you've done some damage. Like, this is, it's not like you took a ton of damage from this muta harass, but the build is so dependent upon being strong during this time and using that strength to larva block him, that because you weren't strong during this time, now it's kind of, you know, it's a big problem. Big problem, buddy, big problem. So you lost 10 workers to mutas, and then you might think, hey, I lost 15 workers, but I killed 10 workers, so doesn't that put me back in it? The problem is that when you kill a Zerg worker, he instantly replaces it, and it's as if you killed 2 Lings. So killing workers against Zerg only matters if you can do all of his workers at once while he's out of money. Doing a drop and killing some workers when he doesn't feel threatened at his front, they're just going to instantly be replaced. Whereas killing Terran workers, you can't instantly replace your workers, so it hurts you a lot and it doesn't hurt him at all. So you notice his income is still significantly ahead of yours and still significantly ahead of yours, and it has been since 12 minutes. So now you're going to make a frontal push using not all of your troops and not good terrain advantages and not good positioning, and you're just going to get crushed, because Ling Baneling just massively dominates Marines unless you have more of them than him, or unless you have good positioning or a lot of medevacs and good positioning. And so then that's where the game's going to end. So the problem is, I've said a million times, if you look at your money and it doesn't say 0 with no units queued up when you're pushing out, you shouldn't be pushing out now. And the problem is, if you wait too long, he'll get ultras and he'll get brood lords and he'll take 7 bases and you'll be dead. So you kind of have to push now, and I feel for you, and pushing now is kind of the right choice. But you can't expect to win when you have $3,000 in the bank and 6 guys in these bunkers, and it looks like those are the only problems. So yeah, this push is doomed to fail. No spreading whatsoever. Not nearly enough medevacs. 2-2 is done, and the Zerg has 1-1, so that's great. But again, no spread, just kind of walking into the vision of the watchtower and getting dominated. Those Banelings just massively crushed you, and that was terrible. So you notice, even though that was a terrible push and you got your butt kicked, you're still kind of even on damage done. That's how good Marine Marauder is. I mean, Marine Marauder Medevac is in tVz, especially when you have an upgrade advantage. Medevacs shouldn't die during the fight. The second wave should be able to protect your Medevacs. Unfortunately, now that we've shown why you lost the game, there's a lot of little things that I also wanted to hit on that aren't why you lost the game, but they're just things you should be aware of. So this game is over, obviously, and let's go back and see all of the little things. All of the little things. So it's important to tailor your play to the map. And on this map, he can only spawn here or here. And if you build your second racks right here, it's right next to whichever one of his bases it is. So if you're going to do a 12-14 racks push, you might want to consider doing a 12 racks here and a 13 racks here, and then making your orbital on 15 and pushing like really early. Because a 12-13 push is actually going to be right here with 1 Marine and 2 more on the way, and 2 SCVs and enough money for 2 bunkers right now. And if you had that right now, this game would be over. You would have just bunkered here, and the game was over. So he didn't have what it takes to defend against the 12-13 racks, and that's a big vulnerability that you didn't exploit, and that's okay. That's okay. And the reason I say 12-13 is better on this map is because of the rocks. In order to take a safe third, he needs to knock down either these rocks or these rocks. And in order to prevent your third, he needs to knock down those rocks. So there's a lot of rocks that need to be knocked down. So normally the point of making 5 or 7 Marines and then going over and harassing him is to force him to produce Lings. But on this map, or any map where you need to knock down rocks, he needs to produce Lings anyway. It's not putting him behind to force him to produce Lings. So normally, you can put him behind just by making him make Lings, but on this map and other maps like it, that doesn't put him behind at all. Now another big deal is that right now, you're pushing out with these Marines, you're making this bunker. You can put your command center on the low ground, right? And if you build it on the low ground, it's going to be in place, and you're going to be mining from it about probably 50 seconds earlier than if you build it on the high ground. So I feel like building it up here is a reasonably large mistake. It's going to cost you about, I don't know, like 300 minerals, and that's not a huge deal, but still, like if you can get 300 minerals for free, why not? You should just take it, man. Free minerals. Another thing that I should mention is that spines are becoming increasingly popular for Zergs because of Hellions, the ubiquitous Hellion opener that like everyone does. So a late 7 marine push is a lot less likely to work, and on a map like this where he can cover this entire area with 2 spines, he's a lot more likely to just make 2 spines and then completely ignore your pressure. So that's why it's important to come earlier, because this hatchery, if he starts it at 220, which all Zergs do, that's a 15 hatch is 220, then it's going to be done at 4 minutes because it takes a minute and 40 seconds. So this started at 220 and it's going to finish at 4 minutes. That means he can't possibly start a spine crawler until 4 minutes. And a spine crawler takes 50 seconds to complete. The first marine from your racks, if it takes 50 seconds to walk to his base, is going to get here at 350. So the hatchery won't even be done, the spine won't even be started. So pushing with a 12-13 racks is going to be a lot more successful against somebody who is planning to get lings and spines anyway. So on a map like this one, it's probably better to do. On a map like Metalopolis, where he can't really protect himself as well with spines, he's a lot more likely to rely on units, and then the 7 marine pressure is a lot more likely to work. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say about that. Next, what you did with the pressure I think was fine. You did force spines and you did force lings, and so you kind of came out even in that exchange. Another thing to mention is that on this map, if you rally your 9th SCV up here to make the first supply depot, and then you rally your 10th supply SCV down here, then you'll see his overlord if it exists, and then you know where he is. So you can do an engineering bay block by taking the dude who made your depot and just running him over here and dropping down an engineering bay. And the cool thing about an engineering bay block is that it delays when he can get creep down here. And if you can ever have 3 marines and 2 SCVs in position before his lings are done, it's just crazy, crazy cool. So all of those things are beneficial to this opening. Like this opening, the only way that this opening puts you ahead is if he chooses not to get any defense, and Zergs used to do that a lot, and that was cool, but 2 racks is such a common opening now that you just can't really do it this way anymore and get much done. Anyway, good enough. You forced spines, you forced lings. He's spent as much on his army as you have right now, so you guys are kind of even. The bunker placement here is terrible. You're thinking of your bunker the same way that Zergs think of spines, right? Like if I put a spine here and here, he can't get by without taking spine hits, and most Terrans don't want to take spine hits. Zerglings run 3,000 miles per hour. They don't give a shit about running past a full bunker. He'll only lose 2 Zerglings by running past a full bunker. So bunkers aren't meant to block off an area and say you can't get by here without taking shots, because he'll just run by and take shots. You want your bunkers behind a wall of doom, and you're not going to wall in at all with your bunkers. Also, it's nice to have one bunker here, like this is a good kind of position for a bunker, but you kind of want it like more here so that it's covering all of your mineral patches, so that you can't just camp units behind your minerals. And then this bunker doesn't need to be so close to this choke. It's not really helping you much to have it this close to this choke. It can be like here. Basically, the general rule is that it can be 5 spaces away, because in a bunker, Marines get 6 range. So if you make a depot here and then a racks here or an engineering bay here, then the bunker can be there. Alternatively, you can get a bunker on this side of your command center and this side of your command center, and then just put a 3rd bunker up here, and then build stuff in between them, so that you gotta assume with a Baneling bust, whatever's in front is dead. And then you got to make sure that whatever just assume that front thing is taken out of your defense, will the remaining stuff be able to protect me? So it's really nice to have a bunker on one side of a wall and a bunker on the other side of a wall, and then a wall that extends outwards. And then he's got to either go up or down, and he can't kill both of the bunkers with Banelings, and then it's just, you know, much cooler that way. So I like the sort of T defense. You get a wall going like this, and then a wall going like this, and then he's got to knock down this wall, but he can only go on the north side or the south side of this crossbar, and that's really cool. Another thing, this command center, look at this. By the time the command center lands, whoop, you've got, oh, I should go back a little bit. Dun 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 dun. Whoa, what's going on? Must have miscounted before. Anyway, by the time you transfer workers, you had a slightly more than soft cap saturation at that base, so you did lose some minerals by making it on the high ground and floating it down. It's not the end of the world. If you open Hellions, you're almost always going to have to build a command center on the high ground. I still build it on the low ground when I open Hellions, and then just do fake bunker pressure, but yeah, building command centers on the high ground is one of the things that other races say, oh, that's so overpowered, it's so cool that he can protect his command center no matter what, but I like building on low ground. It gives you several hundred more minerals, and that's very cool. So anyway, look at this defense. If he comes in with banelings, or even just roaches, if he just comes in with roaches, like it's 10 minutes in, he could have $4,000 of roaches. If he had $4,000 of roaches and you had this defense, you'd die. And that's cool. A lot of the time, in order to be safe against a greedy Zerg, you have to be greedy yourself. You have to say, look, I'm just going to assume he's not going roaches and say, if he makes roaches, I'll just lose. That's fine. But lings and banelings are something that are a lot more common than a roach all-in. And it's so easy to be immune to ling baneling just by doing that defense that this defense really bothers me. A bunker against lings, you want it so that only 2 or 3 lings can hit your bunker at once. And this bunker, you can fit about like 14 lings around it. In this bunker you can only fit lings here and here, but actually this is not a solid wall. Lings can run through here, so they can get a full surround on this bunker too. So both of these bunkers have the entire surface area of the bunker susceptible to lings. So later on, when he does a ling attack on your base, these bunkers are just going to instantly die, and that's very terrible. You always want a full wall in at your natural, and then your bunkers need to be behind that wall or part of the wall. You never want someone to be able to surround a bunker, because a surrounded bunker is a dead bunker. It hardly matters at all. Bunkers aren't that helpful. And these bunkers are taking money away from your army that you're going to attack with. So it's a big investment to have a bunker. If the bunker is useless, that's a big investment for nothing, for no reason. So you notice he's knocking down rocks around the map. He had to knock down rocks to get this third. So forcing him to make these lings didn't actually put him behind. He actually made even more lings than you forced out of him, because on this map you just need an army to knock down rocks. So we mentioned that before. That's a map-specific thing. Yeah. Another thing I'd like to mention is you didn't get... you got enough gas, but you didn't get enough things that can spend gas. So there's just no way to bring your gas down. The way you're supposed to do this build is your primary focus is to spend every penny of gas, and then the remainder of your money goes into Marines. So you just you never took care of that first part. So when you push out, all of the gas that you mined, it's just not really being used. And especially if you look like right now, this is oversaturated. You should have 3 of these workers down here and both command centers rally down here, but this is undersaturated. You're 4 workers short here and 3 workers high there. That's not a big deal. Again, you did a decent job of spreading guys out. But what's happening here is, you'll notice in both of this game and the previous game, you're 6 workers ahead in your main. And the reason that happens is when you're transferring workers, you've got say 16 workers here, and you say, okay, I need to put 8 of them up here, and now I have 8 here and 8 there. But then when you take the double gas, you're pulling 6 of them off, so it's as if you have 2 here and 8 here. And if you're going to have 2 in one place and 8 in another, you always want to oversaturate your natural, not your main, because your main is already so light on minerals from the initial thing. So when you transfer, remember that you're going to be getting these gases, and when you get the gases, take workers from your main to saturate these natural gases. So yeah, when you first send guys down there, you have 16 guys up here, so send 8 of them down, and then later on when you want them more gas, you grab guys up here, make 2 gas, and then you grab 4 guys and put 2 in there and 2 in there, and then you end up with 6 extra guys in your natural and 6 less guys in your main. Or you can saturate 1 gas from your natural and 1 gas from your main and be even on both. Either way, point is, you never want an oversaturated main and an undersaturated natural, and I don't think it's a coincidence that you were always off by 6. I think that's because there's 6 guys in these 2 gases. Another thing worth mentioning was the positioning of these racks is just utterly terrible. You always have to assume that Zerg's going to get mutas, even if he doesn't. And look at this. You built racks so that the reactor cores are on a ledge. There's no way at all to defend these reactor cores. You can't even use turrets to defend them. There's just no room at all to defend them. It's very, very silly, bad, terrible. Another thing is these turrets. Why are these turrets placed like this? This makes no sense. In general, a Zerg is going to harass here, and then he's going to harass here, and then he's going to harass here. Right? He's going to harass ledges. He's going to come up from a ledge so that he can retreat over a ledge. He's never going to come harass something that's right here. There's never going to be a muta here. This is not a place that mutas will go. This is not a place that mutas will go. So you want a turret like here, and you already have a bunker here. So just one turret here would be great, and then like one turret here, and maybe another turret here and another turret here. And now he just can't get in from the south without facing turrets. And then you want a turret protecting these reactor cores. So in general, think of the layout of your base and where you would go if you had mutas. Mutas never, like, he wants to be able to look away from his mutas for a second and larva inject, right? You can't look away from mutas and then look back quickly enough to save them from instantly dying to 1,000,000 Marines unless you can get them away by right-clicking somewhere on the minimap. So if I have these mutas and I'm attacking you using my minimap, and then I hear your mutas are under attack, I can just right-click on my main and I know they'll get away. And if I have these mutas up here and I look away, and I'm looking at my main and injecting, and I hear your mutas are under attack, I can just right-click here on the minimap and I know they'll get away. Mutas always want to be at the edges of your base so that they can get away safely. So it's only really the edges of your base that you need turrets at. Other than one in each mineral patch, because you don't want to lose all your workers. That would just be silly. So also, when you have this many Marines, it's great to be turret light. Unfortunately, your defense is so shoddy that if you did the right thing, which is to put half of your Marines, or like maybe 10 Marines here, 10 Marines here, 10 Marines here, and 10 Marines over here knocking down these rocks. If you did that, he would just come and kill you and you would die. So you need a better defense at the front. But once you have a strong, intimidating looking defense that would cost him a lot of money to get through, then you don't need your Marines to be positioned in the front anymore. You can just put them wherever you want. And another cool thing about having that strong defense where you're not worried about a counterattack to the front is that you can knock down these rocks really early. A Zerg, in general, it takes him the first 7.5 minutes of the game to fully saturate the minerals on his main and his natural. So for those first 7.5 minutes of the game, if he has any army whatsoever, he's putting himself behind and he's gonna attack you or something. But in general, most games, even if you haven't scouted, you can just assume that Zerg has nothing and is not going to attack you for the first 7.5 minutes of the game. I mean, if he hasn't come at 6 minutes, he's not going to come at 7.5. Anyway, so knocking down these rocks early is always better, especially because if you put one Marine attacking this rock at the very beginning of the game, then that Marine will eventually knock down the rock before you even need to take your expansions. And if the Zerg runs over and kills that Marine, what did you lose? A Marine. Like, who cares about one Marine? So if you wait until the last minute to knock down the rocks, you need to risk the lives of a much larger group of guys in order to knock down the rocks in time. So I always prefer to knock down the rocks early with a very small force, like 1 or 2 guys. Yeah, so the big problem in the previous game was that at 12 minutes you want to be throwing down a command center and throwing down extra racks. In this game you did that. You did the right thing. That was great. So the big problem in this game was that you had no turrets protecting these workers, and then when you lost workers, your income was tiny, and you just kind of lost from there. But a second big problem, you didn't get Blue Flame Hellions, you didn't get Banshees, you didn't get a second starport. There was no way for you to spend your gas. So right now you have 500 gas, and you're not even using this starport. And so your gas is just building up and building up and building up and building up. And then for some reason, at some point, you pulled guys off of one of these gases, probably because your gas got so high. I'm okay with that, especially because you lost workers. You need more workers on minerals to fully saturate those, so it just makes no sense to have guys on gas at this point. But yeah, you never got a second starport. You never made Hellions or tanks or Thors or anything that costs gas. So your gas is just climbing and climbing, and it gets up to 1,000. It's just no way to do a build that requires you to have a bigger army than him while having 1,000 unspent gas. You're not going to have a bigger army than him. It's not possible. So one thing you might want to try is to refine this build on the in Yabit or against a very easy AI, and figure out when you need to get these 2 extra gases. Because if you're not going to make a second starport, this starport and these engineering bays, I believe, you can fund both of those off of 2 gases. Reactor cores are really gas heavy, and all this stuff is kind of gas heavy, so you usually need the extra 4 gases. Also, if you oversaturate your first 2 bases and don't take these gases, then you got a bunch of idle SCVs, so why not get gas with them? But always make sure that you've fully saturated your minerals before you saturate gas, other than these first 2 gases that you need to build your infrastructure. So, like right now, the minerals here are undersaturated. You have a ton of gas. There's free SCVs here getting gas. You could put them on those minerals. So, yeah. Either spend your gas or don't get so damn much gas, because every one of your minerals is undersaturated at this point, and yet you have 12 guys mining gas, and you're not going to spend it. So that's just a whole bunch of money that's going to waste, basically. A whole bunch of SCVs that are idle. Also, you actually have SCVs that are truly idle. This guy and this guy and this guy. 6 guys, actually. 6 idle SCVs. So I know what I like to have one guy who I never send back to minerals, just to remind me with this idle SCV bar that I'm supposed to make more supply depots. But the rest of your guys, if you send a guy to make a racks, you got to shift click him back to the minerals. If you send a guy to make a turret, you got to shift click him back to the minerals. All that kind of stuff. You should never have 6 idle SCVs. That's pretty tragic. Benchmark, it's 1550 is 200 unit space. You don't even have enough supply depots to get there. You have a lot of money. You have a lot of infrastructure. You could theoretically have an additional, what, $3,000 worth of stuff. And if you take 3,000 and put it into $50, that's 60 unit space. So you would have exactly 200 unit space if you spent all of your money. You see how that works? How cool is that? So at 16 minutes, you have enough money for 200 unit space, but you actually don't have 200 unit space. You have 143. So that's pretty tragic. I love that you got this planetary fortress up relatively quickly and that he didn't like instantly knock it down. But one thing you really got to worry about is that if you mine out your main so quickly and then you get a quick third, you're actually still only on 2 bases. Also, a big play from Zergs, if they get a huge economic lead, then they're willing to throw away 22 banelings to knock down your third. And if you have no 4th or even no 4th coming, then now you're stuck on 2 almost completely mined out bases and the game ends. So get that 4th up almost immediately after your thing. So at 12 minutes you want to throw down the command center so that you're ready to take your 3rd, and then at 15 minutes when you push out you want to throw down another command center to take your 4th. And then as soon as the game is decided whether one side is winning or not, you definitely want to start your 5th. Big problem I see often is that you'll not from you specifically, but people in general who try this build will trade well. Like, look, units lost is even, and you trade well in these fights, but then the Zerg keeps taking more bases. After each fight, he takes another base. After each fight, he takes another base, and the Terran doesn't. Like, there's no reason for Terran not to take just as many bases as Zerg. I know a Zerg base is cheap, $300, practically free. But Terran can build the bases inside their own main and then float them. So there's almost no way to lose a command center unless the game is already so far gone that you're just completely screwed anyway. So build command centers inside your base every 4 minutes or so and try to take bases. And if you're prevented from taking bases, try harder, man. I don't know. But I'd much rather lose a game where I had an unlandable command center than lose a game because I didn't even make a command center and he knocked down my 3rd and now I have nothing left whatsoever in the universe. So at 18 minutes, you should actually at 16. Okay. So at 12 minutes, you should be at 2,400. 2,400. You're not. That's terrible. But then, more importantly, at 15 minutes when you make your push, you put down your 3rd, you should instantly jump up to 3,600. And to be, like, at this point, you're $700 off of the benchmark, and you're like, wow, that's a big deal. That's like 30% less money than I really wanted to have at this point, and that's terrible. You could have avoided that by instantly pulling guys off gas when you lost those workers and making sure that you had enough guys in both places. Like, when you lose a bunch of workers in your main, there's no need to have an oversaturated natural and an undersaturated main now. Like, pull some dudes from your natural and move them up here, and pull some guys off gas. But anyway, this is the important part. You land this command center, and now suddenly you're supposed to jump, bam, right up to 3,000 mineral income and 700 gas income. And you do put workers on it, you do drop mules on it, and your income does jump from 900 to 1,500. But this is so much lower than the ideal. I mean, 3,000, that's what you're shooting for, 3,000. And we even with an extra mule drop, like this is a double mule drop, 4 mules at once, you're still only at 2,400. It keeps going up and down, but it's averaging around 2,500. So, yeah. That's the problem, man. That is why this game was lost. Too much unspendable gas. Not enough usage of the racks you had. Like, I feel like you had enough racks. You had 7 racks. But if they're not constantly being used, you can't catch up. There's a problem that if you build 7 racks and a starport, then let's just do some math here, man. Okay, this is 42 seconds times 200. So 200 times 2 every 42 seconds, right? Times 60. So you got 570 there, plus 7 times 250, right? So you have enough infrastructure to spend $2,300, but your income is supposed to be, at this point, it's supposed to be 3,700. So that's not enough infrastructure at all, anyway. But because you were short on workers and on whatever, you only have $3,200 income instead of 37. But still, 32, yeah, you can only afford at best to spend 23, and you only have 32. I mean, you have like 32 income, so you just don't have enough buildings to spend all your money. That, like, what's the point in life at that point? Like, you can't spend all your money. But on top of the fact that you can't spend all your money, pretend that you did have enough production infrastructure to spend all your money, because pretty soon your main's going to run dry, and then you're going to be stuck on 2,700 income because it's 6 gases and 2,000 minerals income. Then you will have enough to spend all your money, but every single time you forget to make a marine for a little while, you get a little bit behind. So say you only forget 1 cycle, and that puts you only $600 behind, but your infrastructure is exactly big enough to spend all of the money you've got coming in. So you'll stay exactly 700 behind for the rest of the game. You'll never catch up. So you always want more infrastructure than you need. You never want less, because less, you're just going to build a bigger and bigger and bigger trust fund, and more, you'll end up never having any money, and you'll say, oh, I only have 180 unit space right now, and if I hadn't built those extra 3 racks, I could have had 200 unit space, and like, isn't that tragic? But in the long run, better to have too much than too little, because I'd much rather die because I built too many racks than die because I have $3,000 in the bank and I can't spend it. So, yeah, lots of unused space in your base here. Not enough buildings. The way you build your base is kind of a difficulty of getting enough racks. Like, it's really hard to jam 14 racks, 2 factories, 2 starports, 2 engineering bays, and an armory into a base this size. So you really gotta kind of like practice and figure out how to lay out your base. Also, because you have to build your first racks at the ramp here, you're gonna need a turret up here anyway. So it's good to jam as many important buildings around this ramp as you can, because you already need to put a turret up there just to protect the first rack, so you might as well get like 200 racks here. Building depots in a place where you're going to have a turret is kind of silly, because you don't mind losing depots nearly as much as you mind losing that other stuff. This area of your base is like the safest area in the universe, so there should definitely be some stuff here. Most pro players will build depots behind the minerals, because there's a lot of room for depots behind these minerals. You can probably fit enough depots to get you through the entire game just building them behind the minerals, as well as like a depot wall up here and a depot cross right there. And then that leaves the whole rest of your base to build buildings. So yeah, not enough bases, not enough workers, not enough buildings, and other than that, it looked good. Other than that, So when he knocks down your planetary fortress, the game is over, right? Because you don't have any income left after that. Like, there's no recovering. I'd like to mention this mass Ling Muta stuff doesn't work at all against somebody who has Thors and Blue Flame Hellions, right? So if you make 2 factories and you get some Thors and some Blue Flame Hellions, in general people will be forced to go into Roaches. And it's a hard style because Roaches and Mutas, it's so much harder to resist their damage when you don't have a million Marines running around. But the cool thing is that Zerg doesn't have scans. And they can't just like look at what you have. Even if they run Mutas into your base, they only see this side of your base, this side of your base. They don't know what's over here, and they might see up here as well at a later point, but they don't see them both at once. So if you have one Thor that runs over here to respond to Mutas, and then runs over here to respond to Mutas, and then runs over here he doesn't know if that's 2 Thors, 3 Thors, 5 Thors. Also, you know how I said Mutas love to look away? Like, he'll have his Mutas hitting here, there'll be nothing attacking them. He'll look away and inject, and if he hears your Mutas are under attack, he'll click the Mutas away, and they'll fly quickly away. And so you only get 1 shot off. With Marines, 1 shot off might kill, you know, half a Muta. But with a Thor getting 1 shot off, if you're not watching Mutas, they tend to clump up, and that can, like, damage 7 Mutas at once. So once he knows you have a Thor, he's no longer allowed to look away. So that means every time he Muta harasses, he has to watch it. And that means he misses an inject. And that means he's afraid to Muta harass sometimes because he wants to make sure he hits the next inject, or he wants to make sure blah, blah, blah. So Muta harassing is so much scarier for the Zerg if you have 1 Thor. And you don't need to upgrade the Thor, and you don't need to bring it with you on attacks, and you don't need to do anything with it. Just make it like a mobile turret and scare the shit out of the Zerg. Blue Flame Hellions cost minerals, Marines cost minerals. You need a ton of Marines to defeat Roaches. You need a ton of Marines to defeat Ling Baneling. So every Hellion you make takes away from your Marine count. So it's debatable whether or not it's important to get Blue Flame Hellions. I really like the having some of them, because if you make enough Blue Flame Hellions, sometimes the Zerg feels like, well, what can I do? Well, there's nothing that can beat Blue Flame Hellions except for Mutas or Roaches or whatever, and I can't use Mutas because he's got all these Marines around the Hellions, and if I make Roaches, then all his Marines and Marauders will just kill them, so I don't know what to do. You know, it's a good thing to make Zergs think, because again, it's the same problem with the Thors. If they know you have Blue Flame and they know you have Hellions, they never know when 400 Hellions are going to show up. Because 14 Blue Flame Hellions is only 28 unit space. It's a tiny fraction of the unit space you've spent on even just this little army here. And it makes you completely 100% immune from Zergling damage. Now, I'm not saying get 14 Hellions, but I'm saying every Zerg knows that if you have that many Hellions, he can no longer use Lings. And that scares the shit out of him, because he's upgrading Lings. He's making Lings. Lings are what's keeping him safe. And if he knows you have Blue Flame Hellions, you know, just things can be scarier for him in his life. Also, you really need to be able to spend the gas, and making a second factory is a good way to do that. Another thing is that even if you make this T with like bunkers and supply depots, if he's far enough ahead, he'll just run Lings and Banelings in there and kill you. But if you have 1 siege tank, like up here or here or here or like in here, then it becomes 200 times scarier for the Zerg to counterattack. A siege tank on the low ground is not very scary. It'll kill 6 Lings and then it'll die, and that's no big deal. But if you have a siege tank up here that he can't hit except with Mutas, and then you have a turret next to it, and then you have Marines capable of reinforcing it, and you have that Thor that's roving around, he's never going to kill that tank. So he feels like it puts a timer on his attack. You'll notice a lot of times when the game is ending, Zergs will just run Lings in your base and not even watch them and just be like, well, Lings are cleaning that up, that's fine. But if you have this siege tank that's constantly killing Lings, it makes him feel like, okay, at what point have I done enough damage that it justifies retreating? He can't just leave the Lings in there forever, because eventually they'll all die even if it takes a long time. So he'll want to run in, do some damage, and run away. And he's thinking about when he's going to run away from the very beginning of the fight, and that's good for you, man. That's good for you. So I don't like siege tanks. I don't like bringing them with me into the open field. Siege tanks, when they get surrounded by Lings, will never ever pay for themselves. Siege tanks are pointless on an attack unless you're making a ton of them. Like if you can bring 10 siege tanks and you can float a racks out front so that you know that you can siege them up in time, then sure, they're good. But you're never going to make 10 siege tanks with the amount of gas you have on 2 bases if you're spending so much of it on upgrades and medevacs. So it's just not worth bringing siege tanks with you on your attack, but I think it's totally worth making 2 of them and just using them for defense. You can put them on ledges here and here, for example, and now this defense at the front is so much scarier. He'll just never ever attack into it just because he knows you have those 2 siege tanks. Another way to spend gas is Thors, like I said. I don't know about Thors. Thors are terrible against Lings, but they're great against Banelings and great against Mutas. So I don't know. You know, sometimes if it's better to spend your gas on Medivacs and Banshees and Blue Flame Research and Hellions, but if you got so much gas that you can't spend it anyway, I don't know. Make some Thors. It's cool. No big deal. I'd much rather just get the 2nd starport a lot earlier myself, because Banshees are crazy good. They force him to keep his mutas there. Like, right, what he wants to do, again, all Zergs have 2 control groups, one for melee and one for these mutas. And what he wants to do is fight your army with both control groups, and then halfway through the fight, he's like, this is basically over, I'm going to take my mutas and go harass you. And if you have Banshees that are behind your Marines being protected by Marines, he can't leave with his mutas, because he needs to stay there, or else you're just going to constantly pick shit off with those Banshees. Another thing is that if you are doing a drop here and a drop here and attacking the front, or harassing over here or something, if you're in multiple places at once, and 2 of those different places have Banshees with them, now suddenly he can't kill the Banshee at one of those 2 places, right? So usually if you drop here and drop here at the same time, he's going to send the mutas over here and the Lings over here, and he knows that mutas against Marines is a terrible engagement, and that's going to come out great for you, and that's good already. But if both of these also have 1 Banshee, then now he can't stop the Banshee over here, and it just gets to kill like 20 drones. Or it can kill the spawning pool or whatever. Anyway, spend your gas is kind of the point. You don't have to necessarily be focusing on making a Banshee and using it properly. I'm just rambling about things that I would do, when I honestly don't think that would be a good thing for you to try to do. You got much more fundamental things to worry about, like the fact that you didn't spend any of this mule energy for a long time, and the lack of a 4th, and the bad positioning of your units, and the bad wall-in, and you know, I tried to first tell you everything you need to know to beat this guy, and then for the next 6 hours I mumbled about other important things that you probably don't need to worry about because they're beyond you, but they're things that you should know for the future. Once you've worked out the easy things, the hard things are the only thing you have left to work on, you know? So anyway, yeah, dude, I think that's everything. So just in case I didn't say it in this video, the whole point of Uber Ups is to take advantage of the income discrepancy between a 2-base Terran and a 2-base Zerg from 12 minutes to 13 minutes, or from 9 minutes to 13 minutes or something. That it usually puts you a little bit ahead on your army size at like 15 minutes or 14 minutes or whatever. And then make a scary push. And what you want to be doing is trading Lings and Banelings for Marines and Medivacs. And when you kill off a Zerg's Lings, he needs to make more Lings. And making Lings off of 4 hatcheries, it's like if you fight often enough, he'll run out of larvae. And that's what you want to do. You want his money to get super high because you just can't keep up on the larvae. And that's kind of what you did, and that's great. He was basically larva blocked at some point, and that's why his money is so damn high. So you're not trying to kill the mutas. Like, if you get a chance to kill mutas, great, kill mutas, but that's not that's not like the goal. The goal is to kill the Lings and the Banelings over and over and over and over, while your money doesn't get high and his money does get high. And then eventually, as you keep killing them over and over and over, then you start doing drops, and he doesn't have enough Lings to respond to both the drops and the thing. Yeah, in the front, and then he starts losing hatcheries, and that's the end of the universe. So, larva blocking is what we're going for. You want him to miss injects because he's so busy doing stuff, and you want him to not have enough